Hello, and welcome to our poetry celebration. Today marks the start of week 3, and so far we've had 2 solid weeks of poetry and community and writing, and it's been so much fun. My name is Kate Chadbourne. I'm a poet and writer, and I'm hosting this celebration in conjunction with the journal makers Jumping Fox Design. And we're just delighted to welcome you for the first time or welcome back. It's so good to be together and to be here with poetry. So I'd love to start today by sharing some of the wonderful poems that I received over the last week. I just love everything that comes in. Thank you all so much for the poems and for the encouragement and for the enthusiasm. It means the world to me. So without further ado, let me share some of the poems that came in. You might recall that last week our prompt was to write a praise poem, and I'm so pleased to tell you that some wonderful poems came along that prompt. Let me share the first one. It comes from my very dear friend Cynthia, and she wrote an ode to opal soap. And I have to admit that I gave Cynthia the soap in question. So this is Cynthia's poem, Ode to Opal Soap. Mermaid, you glide deep, down into a sea of purple, iridescent and lapis-y blue. No, I won't forget the sparkling foamy pinks and light oceanic mother of pearl that so lovingly caresses my hands. It's cold today. I splash warm water on my face. Lather, sparkle, lather. Lavender sky meets warmly coral, aqua teal and minty greens. The fresh fragrance of clean hands. I love that poem. We can celebrate everything, can't we? So here is another celebration of something right in our home. And this one comes from my friend Anne. And I love this poem too. It's called Hymn to a Dutch Oven. Oh, sing a new song of the Dutch oven, kitchen friend, green and true. At home in oven, on burner and at table, with ladles and spoons, its eager retinue. Oh, praise with cymbals the clash of the heavy lid whose oval groove meets pot's rim, settles and seals, dims, boil to bubble, sizzle to hiss. Oh, clap your hands for caldo verde, jambalaya, lentil soup, bœuf en daube, rhubarb chutney, berry cobbler, cassoulet, and cottage pie. Oh, praise with dancing feet the way to the board. Oh, be joyful, feasting friends, in convivial candles glow. So lovely. It makes you want to praise everything in your house, from the soap to everything in the kitchen, doesn't it? I love these poems. Thank you. Now, we also had poems that celebrate our furry friends, and I really enjoyed this one because it felt so familiar to me. This is by my friend Mike. It's called Morning with My Kitty, Kathmandu. First of all, Mike, that is a great name for a cat, Kathmandu. It starts with love taps at 4:15 a.m. Gently, on my face. Even before the birds, Kathmandu is ready to start the day. He lets me know that he's up and about from love taps. He tries clawing the bed and staring into my sleeping face. A blizzard of plush white fur is trying to smother me. Standing on my kidney is worth a try. If he could, he'd push me out of the bed. Finally, I get up, pee, and fill his bowl. It's morning with my kitty, Kathmandu. That's a delight. And Betsy, a wonderful artist, shared this poem called Anything. You drink from a glass. Okay, I get it. It's just your thing, your feline fetish. Maybe it tastes better, taller, or you like your face in water. Sometimes you get stuck, your face distorted and cupped. Sometimes you're surprised and you don't like what's inside. But I'm not complaining. You're very entertaining. And so I indulge as you've grown to expect. You know I'd do anything for my pet. I love all of these. Thank you so much. And finally, one more from my friend Deb. And Deb mentioned that she had not been planning to write a poem, and then this just came. And it's such a wonderful thing, isn't it? It's such a gift when poems come that way. This is called Sunrise Service, Easter Breakfast. I was awakened by birds and embraced the long moments before dawn. Long moments before the yolk escapes from the crack to make its statement of day. The stillness before the sizzle and shine of the pan can grease the way to the plate, illuminate the path to the palate, and proceed to the gullet of night again. Long moments of stillness, of dread, and then of inevitable praise, while I watch time glide through the trees with the turn of the earth. An hour passes before I can sing the old song that came to mind when I opened my eyes. Morning has broken. As I sang of the blackbird, it matter-of-factly landed on the branch in front of me. I live a life filled with such enchantments. That's a beauty. And I think we all do, if we notice them. Thank you, everybody, for your poems. Please keep them coming. And I do want to say, everyone, you are willing to participate, you are very welcome, rather, to participate in any way you choose at any point. If you haven't sent poems before, you can send them now. If you don't want to this week, don't. No problem. You can send 1, you can send 7. So whatever feels right, however you want to jump in, we are so glad to welcome you. Again, send poems to me by Sunday. That is the 19th of April, Sunday, by 5 o'clock. And that way I'll have them for next week's video. And you can write to me at kate@katechadbourne.com. So now I'd like to introduce you or reintroduce you to a poet that I know personally and admire a great deal. His name is Wes McNair. I had the great good fortune of meeting him many years ago at a poetry conference in southern Maine and in Ocean Park, a wonderful conference, and getting to learn from Wes, which opened a lot of doors in my understanding and my excitement about poetry. And since then I've followed him. He has been the Poet Laureate of Maine from 2011 to 2016. He has written many, many books, not just of poems, but also memoir. Let me just show you a few. He's done so much. One of the first places I found Wes was in this book, The Maine Poets, an Anthology. And I have to say, I think Wes has a real gift. In addition to writing poetry, another gift he has is of choosing poems. So as Poet Laureate of Maine, he had a column in the Portland Press Herald called Take Heart. And this book gathers some of those poems. These are some of, I encourage everybody to take a look at this book. These are readable, real poems. They're wonderful poems. People in the Portland Press Herald loved these poems. My mother loved these poems. She would often save them and read them to me. They're fantastic. You'd love them. So take a look. Wes is a great chooser of poems. Another anthology of his, Maine in 4 Seasons. I love all of these. I'd say Wes is a great celebrator of the people of New England. His own people, he's originally from New Hampshire, but he has lived in Maine for a long time. And he tells the stories of New England people with so much honor and appreciation and artistry. And I just love his poems. many, many books here just to show you the town of No, Talking in the Dark. Today I'm going to read you a couple of poems from this book, which is actually a gathering of some of the poems from his collected books. This is a beloved poem by many, many people. It's called The Rules of the New Car. After I got married and became the stepfather of 2 children, just before we had 2 more, I bought it, the bright, blue, sorrowful car that slowly turned to scratches and the flat black spots of gum in the seats and stains impossible to remove from the floor mats. Never again, I said, as our kids, 4 of them by now, climbed into the new car. This time, there will be rules. The first to go was the rule I made for myself about cleaning it once a week. The why, I shouted at the kids in the rear view mirror, should I have to clean it if they would just remember to fold their hands? 3 years later, it was the same car I had before, except for the dent my wife put in the grill when, ignoring the regulation about snacks, she reached for a bag of chips on her way home from work and hit a tow truck. Oh, the ache I felt for the broken rules and the beautiful car that had been lost, and the car that we now had on soft shocks in the driveway, still unpaid for. Then one day, for no particular reason except that the car was loaded down with wood for the fireplace at my in-laws' camp, and groceries and sheets and clothes for the week, my wife in the passenger seat, the dog lightly panting beside the kids in the back, all innocent anticipation, waiting for me to join them. I opened the door to my life. Do you love that? I opened the door to my life. Life as it is so worth celebrating, right? The Dutch oven and the soap and the cats. That's what we do. Here, one more poem from Wes. His poems are wonderful, and many of them, there are poems that are truly sorrowful, and they'd almost break your heart. And but through them all is Wes's very good heart himself. This one celebrates that life with his beloved wife and his family, and it's called Love Story. What was opening the door those years ago to let our 4 kids, one by one, followed by the dog, into the back seat of the old compact car we'd parked in the driveway next to the downhill road because the battery went dead the day before? What but a prayer? What were our arguments as we tried to time my pushing the family down the road and your taking the foot off the clutch to start the car, though instead bringing it to a dead stop over and over? What but an agreement to go on despite our limitations? What was the moment in the midst of our despair when the engine suddenly caught and you roared away and came back for me, and I got in by the soda can on the floor and the dog now sitting between us on the emergency brake, the whole family smiling as the trees broke apart faster and faster above our heads? What but a blessing? That so joyful and truthful, the truth and the joy and the truth. And I wanted to share both of those poems because there they are, the car, right? And the dog and the kids and the mess and love. And there it all is. So this week for our Poetry Spark, why don't we take a leaf out of Wes's book and write a poem using questions? I love questions in writing of any kind. Instantly they wake me up, and I bet it's the same for you. You know, you don't even have to answer the questions. In fact, it can be very powerful not to answer the questions. You might just write a list of questions. Wes's poem sort of intersperses those questions, what was it but this, with a little bit of story. He's a storytelling kind of poet. You might use a story as well, or perhaps intersperse your question with brief statements or ideas, or maybe just use questions. See what you think. It would be fun to see what you come up with. So give that a try and send them to me, and I would love to see them. So let me show you my journal again. This journal that I love, the Jumping Fox Design Journal. And I hope you're noticing, here's our fox. I'm wearing a fox. Thank you to my dear friend Trisha, who gave me this, knowing that I love foxes, gave me this great dress. My journal is filling up, and you know, we talked about it last week, about letting yourself just fill the journal. And, you know, I was showing you my very messy drafts and how I gave myself permission to write messy drafts again and again. And the other thing I think over the week that I've thought a lot about is starting with no idea of where you're going. And you know, in school, when people teach us about writing, they often say, okay, write an outline, make sure, you know, you make your your 3x5 cards with all, that's the old days. You can tell it's the old days, but you know, you were meant to know where you were going. You were meant to know there was a destination. And I just want to reassure you, if you don't, to say that I don't either. I sit down every day with this book in my lap and my fountain pen, and I really don't know where I'm going. It's been helpful to have my little guide, right, that I'm writing poems that have jumping or fox, something to do with those, but I really don't know where those things are going to take me, and that's okay. And taking the time to let that poem unfold and sort of declare itself is a kind of journey and some trust. So if you feel like, well, I don't know, I'll wait to know until I know, right? I'll wait to write until I know. Maybe you could just let yourself open your journal or open your MacBook or whatever it is and just start. Just start messing around and see what happens, knowing that you don't have to know, right? It's a pleasure to write messy drafts. It's a pleasure to make the assignment for the day that simple. All I have to do is write a messy draft. That's it. So I'd love to share with you a poem that I wrote this week from my own, our shared prompt. I wrote an ode to my front steps, old and new. And just to tell you that until fairly recently, I had very old rickety steps. And the very exciting thing has happened over the last few months is that I now have new steps. So this is my attempt at an ode. Ode to my front steps, old and new. The old ones were gray and splintered pine. You could climb and descend them just fine, but there was a wobble that hinted at a letting go, and they seemed less sure of themselves winter by winter, snow by snow. Fred built the new ones of golden Siberian pine. He edged them with balusters and orderly lines and good broad banisters to welcome the hand, and he twice measured the treads to assure the foot of a sane place to land. Shaky or firm, the front steps proffer welcome where the infinite world meets the small world of home. What was true of the old is now true of the new. Their hello and goodbye, depart and arrive, with a door at the top that opens for you. Thank you for hearing that. So this week I want to invite you to do something in addition to writing poems and sending them to me. I asked Grace and Zsuzsanna of Jumping Fox Design if they would mind if we asked them some questions so that we can get to know them better. So please, in addition to poems or just this, send me some questions. What would you like to know about what it's like to be the maker of journals, of these wonderful journals? How did they get started? Whatever you're kind of curious to find out, write your questions to me. I'll send them along to Grace and Zsuzsanna, and we'll have some answers for you next week. So I thought that would be fun just to find out. I don't know, I've never made a journal. Can't wait to hear. In addition, here's a dare for you. Last week I dared you to share a poem with somebody, and this week I want to dare you to memorize a little bit of a poem. You know, years ago, Seamus Heaney, the great Irish poet Seamus Heaney, came to Harvard, as he so often did, but it was one of his last visits. And he gave a lecture about the pleasures of memorizing poems. And he told us a story about his father, saying that his father knew 2 poems by heart and that they were good for all occasions. And I just love that, you know, that he could recite them or pieces of them at a wedding or a funeral, in a joy, in a sorrow, just to keep himself company. I wonder what poems have lived with you like that, that maybe you'd love to go back to and just take another look at. There are certain poems that are such good company, and having the lines in your mind just makes you a little richer. So if you do that, if you follow that poetry dare, please let me know. Again, you can send that in a note to me. I love to hear from you, kate@katechadbourne.com. Put them in the comments on this video. Inspire us to look at some poems that you particularly love. It's been something, I started to memorize poems when I was in my 20s. And a lot of those poems are still with me, and they just give me something special. So thank you, my friends, so much for your company, for your poems, for your encouragement, for being part of this poetry life that we are sharing together and this poetry celebration. I so appreciate you, and I'm so delighted to be with you in this time. So have a wonderful week of poetry, and I will look forward very much to seeing you next week. Thank you, and be well.